Welcome. Thanks for joining us here at Heart of the Father. Once again, we're just taking time to enjoy the presence of the Holy Spirit. And as we do that, as we spend time with Him, it's from that place of abiding that we produce lasting fruit. And once again, I'm here with Steve. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks. Great to be here, bud.
It's always glad to have you. And we've been talking about discipleship. Last week, it's one of our favorite topics, and not just discipleship, but the dynamic between the disciple, and which we spend a lot of time talking about, and the discipler. And so we're going to lean in. We're all called to be disciple makers. So how do we step into that with confidence, and what are some specifics that we can do? And so Steve and I are going to share some of just our relationship and that dynamic. Steve, I remember that, clear back in 1986, I came to Youth of the Mission as a person that had just really had encountered Jesus about a year before. And so I think there were two dynamics, because today I want to lean into the fact that there are key seasons in the lives of disciples that we as disciplers need to be aware of, that when they're very open and receptive. And one of those times would be right after they give their lives to Jesus. That's huge. And then when there's key change and transitions. And so for me, obviously coming to YWAM was a key transition out of college. Now I'm saying, okay, Jesus, what do you have for me? It's going to be a 6-month program. And obviously you were not only the training school leader, but you taught that first week. So obviously a real key time. And just lean into that concept with me a little bit today about how in birthing seasons, in transitional seasons, it's a key time for us to be aware of as disciple makers, that we have a great opportunity to impart and pour into other people.
Yeah, well, I was at a special advantage position thinking about our relationship, especially in the beginning, because we're helping lead a program that you were a part of. But at the same time, one thing that inspires or will stoke get the flow going, in a sense, prime the pump of someone who's wanting to make disciples, is a display of hunger. And so when someone's hungry, or they're paying attention, or their approach to life, how they view themselves, or I'm just sitting around waiting for something good to happen, or they're looking for opportunities, they're showing up, however you want to describe it. I believe you demonstrated yourself in that regard, which caught my attention. I have a memory of playing pickup football early on in some picnic or something we probably did in the early days.
Okay.
And you made some catch, risking your whole life to make a catch for a totally insignificant football game. But there was an aggressiveness to you that was even displayed in playing pickup football. An aggressiveness and a hunger,
sure.
Like, hey, I'm in. When I do something, I do it. And that's attractive to someone who's looking for a place to impart. So I just wanted to emphasize that, thinking about the whole thing of discipleship, people wanting to make connection. Hunger will often prime the pump of those who have something to give. And then the second piece would be what you do with what they give to you.
Yeah.
If you value it and put it into action, then it just gets the flow going. But I agree with Bob. Because I'm at this point, I'm almost 66, so I've sort of moved into the old man stage, in a sense. So my perspective has changed, especially in regard to how I viewed making disciples as a young man, and et cetera, through my life. That's sort of changed. It is critical, those points where a person is looking to find out, where do I fit? This is a new place for me. It could be geographical, it could be a new place of interaction, or whatever it may be. Being there to just connect is huge, especially early on. One example would be in the outreach we talked about this earlier, outreach to international students. When they first arrive into a new culture, new city, whole new experience, et cetera, et cetera. If you're there to go, I'm here for you. Don't worry, it's all going to be good. What do you need? Need a ride? Need something to eat? You want to come to my house? I'll just take you under my wing. There's a bonding that takes place in that moment, or in that season, where they're looking for someone to connect to. And that's powerful. And that translates over into all of our relationships, as you said, when someone first comes to faith, to be there. Right now, in my position, to walk up to younger men, especially, put my arm around them and breathe courage into them. Breathe a little confidence into them, or help them just, quote, get over themselves. Like, hey, just relax.
Yep.
You're going to live a long time. So whatever you're stressing about right now, you're worried about making a mistake, you got plenty of years, if the Lord tarries, to recover from your terrible mistakes you're worried about right now. So just relax. Go ahead and make a mistake, buddy. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. We'll clean it up together. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's that connection, that relational connection is huge. So sharing meals, sharing activities, doing things together, digging a hole together,
Yeah.
whatever, stacking boxes, picking up chairs, can bond people.
Yeah. Yeah. You've done that for me, and you've done that for a lot of people. And just to reiterate from my perspective, the things you said, when I first came to know Jesus, those first encounters, those first people that are around you. I mean, the Bible talks about, even for those of us who have walked with Jesus, it says, hey, crave the spiritual, be like a newborn baby again. Get back into a season at times where you're craving that milk, where you're actually crying, where the parents are like, oh my gosh, it's time to feed this child again. But there's that, and that's just a natural, God-given process that's birthed in a physical baby, but that's reality for a spiritual baby too. And yet we've all heard the stories, and maybe even seen some, for those of us who've traveled and been in orphanages, where if a child is not given that attention at that stage, then they begin to shut down. And so I unfortunately think that we have a number of people that born again, and then and they can't blame, and if that's you or me or anything from our past, you can't blame somebody and say, well, that's their fault. No, we still have to then reach out and encounter the Holy Spirit. But unfortunately, people have shut down because in that key season after being born again, nobody stepped in as a parent, as a discipler, to say, hey, I want to help nurture you. I want to help impart life to you. So it's such a key season, and it's that time. That's where that imprinting. I mean, it's just something God has put in all of creation. We see it in the animal kingdom, and we definitely see it in human beings, where those experiences are so powerful. I mean, when I came to YWAM, the first, let me just back up. When I came to know Jesus, two friends, Mitch and Terry, there was that hunger for Jesus. So every Wednesday night, to this day, I think it was the activity in my entire life I bet was most committed to. It was like, I don't care, doesn't matter what you invite me to on Wednesday nights, I'm not going. Because I'm going to hang out with Mitch and Terry, and we didn't necessarily even know really how to study the Word that well, but we just opened up the Bible and would read a passage and say, what do you think Jesus is saying here? And had such a rich time. And then the same way when I came to Youth of the Mission, it was a new season. I had fear and trepidation. I remember initially thinking, okay, certain things were weird, but I was like, okay, I'm all in. I want to be here. So what do you have for me? And just, being poured into was so rich and laid foundations. I guess it's like, can we tear up a foundation after it's already been laid? Yeah, but most people don't want to do that because it's a lot of work. So it's a key time to lay a foundation to build on. So from a discipler's perspective, it's huge for us to recognize that this is a key time to lay a solid foundation in somebody's life, which will set them up for success, that they can build so many wonderful things for their own walk with Jesus, their own marriage, or even when they do get married, if they're not married, all these things that are key principles in life. So
yeah, well, I came to faith at 15, and I had the privilege to hang out with, there's a large group of young men who were about 3 to 6 years older than me. A lot of them, this was at the tail end of the Jesus movement, early 70s. A lot of them had come out of a heavy drug culture, et cetera. They were raw people of faith. They weren't church. They hadn't grown up in church. They were like, well, who's Jesus? Let's get our Bibles. Let's read it. Whatever. Let's do whatever Jesus says. They invited me in to this gang, and there's always something going on. Always a place to be. Always a possibility to hang out. The reason why I share that is just to build off of what you're talking about, the guys you hung out with when you first came to faith. Sometimes we can feel overwhelmed, like, oh my goodness, how can I help this new person? Do I have the relational goods? The key is to create relational environments. Think, okay, what are some relational environments that are really healthy, and then invite those newborn people, those young followers of Jesus, into those relational environments. So you're not carrying the whole relational weight by yourself, but they get brought into this relational environment that's healthy, not perfect, but it's healthy, but it's truly relational, where people are sharing the life of Jesus with one another.
Well, and even in the concept of discipleship there again, I think even as we've last week talked about a discipler and disciplee, so to speak, a disciple, many times there again we can immediately go, oh, just one-on-one, and there again that we can feel the pressure of that. And usually it's out of a group dynamic that's, it's like Jesus had his 12, and then we see a dynamic where at times there were the three, Peter, James, and John, and then he hung out some with Peter and John, and I'm sure he hung out with the others, but we learn in a family setting.
Absolutely.
And God created us to be a part of family. So like you said, creating those relational environments where we're doing things together, and then there'll be those moments where individual modeling takes place or coaching, but usually it's like you said, it's the context is in that group doing life together.
Yeah.
And then even in the teaching things that Jesus did, he took that context and said, hey, you guys went and we tried this, and you tried to bring deliverance to this boy or whatever, and you couldn't do it. Let's talk about that. And so usually it's in that group context, which then allows you to interact not only with the main person who might be considered even by the group to be the main discipler, but to interact with the other disciples and say, to wrestle with those concepts. Oh, let's try this. That's just such a healthy dynamic.
Absolutely. It's much easier.
Yeah.
It's much easier, much less pressure.
Well, and I think for you, all of us, when we hear those words, easier and much less pressure, hopefully you take a sigh of relief with me, because that's what it should be. Jesus didn't intend for discipleship to be this heavy thing like, oh my gosh, I got to get it all right. And that's where Steve has helped me a lot to relax. Like he said earlier, just to tell me, look, chill. If you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. The grace of God is sufficient. And so where's your group? What's your relational environment? There again, that takes initiative on our part. Don't worry about being right or being the person that has all the answers in that group. Many times it's just showing up. It's just stepping into an environment and asking the Holy Spirit again, what relational environment should I be in to do this thing called following Jesus? I love the fact that Steve said just a little bit ago when he was around that gang of guys that were 3 to 6 years older than him, they just said, what's Jesus doing? Let's just do it. So asking the Holy Spirit, where's this group, this relational environment where I can find people that are just doing what Jesus are doing, or I can also even be an impetus, a catalyst to help this group do that. So encourage you to ask the Holy Spirit to lead you in that, and we'll see you next week.